Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unleashing DePIN Podcast. My name is Tyler. I am your host, and I'm really excited for this next conversation that we get to have. We are joined today by Doug. He is the CEO of Livepeer. Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be here. Excited to get into it today.
Yeah, I'm excited to get a chance to chat about what you're building, learn a little bit more in the process of that. So, I always like to kick it off with just a quick introduction about yourself, kind of who you are, what's your background in the space, how did you get into sort of Web3 and this deep in thing that we're doing, and we can jump into it from there.
Awesome. Yeah. As you mentioned, my name is Doug Petkanics. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Livepeer, where we've been building the world's open video infrastructure for the last 7 to 8 years, actually. So we're one of the sort of original DePIN projects, if you will. A little bit of a quick background. My co-founder Eric and I have actually we're sort of repeat entrepreneurs. It's our third time working together on a startup over the last 14 years or so. So long history of building infrastructure together. And we had a data infrastructure startup that worked out and worked real well. And then we built this sort of mobile publishing application that actually didn't work out well. And part of the challenges there, especially as we were doing a lot of video engineering, pushing video into mobile platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and Google, was all of those channels started with open APIs that we could build on and sort of build our business around. And then one by one, they all closed their sort of native mobile publishing APIs. They formed relationships direct with our users and sort of like cut us out of the, our opportunity. And we were like, never again are we going to, build on these closed platforms that control our distribution and our destiny. And that's just so happened to be in the year 2016 when this brand new open development platform called Ethereum had sort of just launched and was just rising in developer awareness. And we were like, this is freaking awesome. Like, this is an open developer platform that lets you put economic incentives into open source software, like gets people to contribute to the software, to run the software, to form networks in a way that they actually benefit as those networks get used. And like, this is really powerful, and sort of dove into the Web3 world, if you will, at that point before it sort of existed. And I can jump to it a little bit, but our interest in video, our experience building on video infrastructure led us to say, hey, can you actually use these powerful tools to create a open source and open access video software stack and video infrastructure network to power the video streaming applications of the future. And we can get into it, but fast forwarding many years down the line today, we power 3 million minutes of video transcoding per week on our compute network of GPUs all around the world. We power a lot of the sort of leading Web3 media and social applications, and also a lot of scaled like Web2 streaming applications through Livepeer's infrastructure.
Wow, that's incredible. There's already so many questions and synapses firing in my brain just around that. So the initial sort of problem set that you were solving, you were getting essentially screwed by all of these other platforms. The open APIs were taking away the ability to do this video distribution. How did you see the intersection of this open source platform that would essentially incentivize the distribution? How did that start fitting into your mental model of maybe bridging a gap in the market or solving a problem that you were experiencing with your previous company?
Yeah, so video over the internet is huge, right? It's 80% of the traffic on the internet, and it's how we communicate, it's how we learn, it's how we work, it's how we get our entertainment,
Case
right?
in point,
And it
right?
actually, yep, exactly. And it actually turns out it's still 40 years into the consumer internet, it's still very hard to deliver video at scale in a good experience without buffering to all the different devices, to all the different connection speeds on the planet. And so it turns out, especially for live streaming, everyone has to build on the same like proprietary closed cloud platforms if they're going to do video at scale. Like, everything is built on AWS or Google Cloud, and it just so turns out those two companies happen to be the owners of the biggest consumer video platforms, YouTube and Twitch,
Right.
as well. So sort of everything runs through there, and all the incentives have been that video software is very closed and proprietary. Like, you have to invest a lot to build it, become an expert, so you have to keep it closed. You have to charge a lot of money for it, and then the infrastructures are owned by the people you're probably competing with. Like, if you're trying to create a great video experience, you're probably competing with YouTube or Twitch, and it doesn't make any sense that you as a developer would be competing with Twitch, but be paying 80% of every dollar you make straight to Amazon to run on Amazon Web Services, like they own Twitch and they're your competitor. So we said, like for the first time, these blockchain-based incentives offer the opportunity for maybe an open source video stack. Like if people can be sort of owners in a network through a token that coordinates them, and they can be incentivized to contribute to open source software because that will, the more that gets adopted, the more the underlying network will be used and the more they'll benefit by doing work on the network. Like that's pretty powerful. Like maybe this token coordinated alignment and the earning opportunity that arises from those who are doing work on it means that you can have incentives for open source software stack. And then this open infrastructure network, like let's create an independent, unstoppable alternative to building on AWS or Google Cloud that anyone can build on, anyone can access, regardless of where you are, regardless of your competitive status with YouTube or Twitch. That could be really, empowering and powerful for the world and a great strategic starting point for any video developer. And again, that's all possible because of the bootstrapping sort of incentives that are enabled by token issuance on these decentralized networks and the coordination that results from the token. And so, those were two of the original building blocks. We've had to do a lot of work since to manifest it into reality, but so far so good.
Yeah, no, I imagine it's been quite a tall order to fill. In terms of your stack right now and sort of the chronology of how you started and where you're at, what does that look like maybe today for Livepeer, and maybe where did it start? Was it really starting with like the software layer that you're having folks contribute to, and then you brought in sort of the decentralized compute component to it to be able to say, hey, we don't need to run these things on AWS? Like, is that a fair overview of where the Livepeer stack is at today?
Yeah, the way it works today, if we take an example user, like let's look at the Lot Radio. It's a great sort of DJ streaming product out of Brooklyn, New York. They stream 24/7 from a shipping container in the middle of Brooklyn.
Right.
What do they do? There's a Livepeer gateway node that's running. It's funded with Ethereum, and they send their video into it. And then that gateway node talks to our network of GPU operators all around the world and says, hey, I have a video stream here. Who's available to do the transcoding to convert that video into all the different bit rates and formats needed to deliver that video to all the device types all around the planet? And it sort of talks to the network. It finds nearby nodes. It negotiates with them on price. It sends the video stream to the one or multiple that can do the job. It checks that the job was done correctly after they do the video encoding on their GPUs. And then, it can serve that video back out to its users. And the payments are settled through probabilistic micropayments using the blockchain to settle it. The work is routed based on the stake that those node operators deposit on the blockchain to secure their work. And that's sort of the current status today. So how did we get there? We started with a smaller version of that complete vision, sort of from the beginning. We communicated a vision. We built some open source software called a media server that can ingest video, serve video. Created a protocol that could incentivize people to run the nodes and earn Livepeer token in exchange for running these nodes, and launched the network in 2018. And from the beginning, it could do a version of this workflow end to end, and sort of deliver on the early utility. It was very raw. It was a janky experience. You had to run nodes, fund it with ETH, etc. Since then, lots of products have been built on top, like Livepeer Studio. It's sort of a hosted SaaS product that any developer can use through APIs instead of having to deal with the crypto complexity. Reliability has improved so much. We've had to scale the payments mechanisms under the hood. But the result of it is a really smooth developer experience that rivals any Web2 streaming platform, but at a fraction of the price. And so we see a lot of developers building on Livepeer at scale apps with hundreds of concurrent streams of video, building on this instead of the clouds, because it can be 60% cheaper than, running your own infrastructure on the cloud. And it can be, 10 times cheaper than using a premium hosted cloud service. And so that's been a nice value proposition for developers.
Sure. So for your target customer demographic that you're really going after, it's developers that are looking to build sort of this video streaming capabilities into their existing service, whether that's, an app or a website or, maybe like a radio show in this case. Am I right on with who you're targeting for developers building on Livepeer?
That's right. Yeah, it's developers looking to add video into their website, into their application, right? We're not targeting the like individual streamer or the creator themselves because they don't just need like a raw developer API to stream video. They need an application, right? They need a web page with a chat box, with a title, with a link, share link, all that stuff. So our users, they span from Web3 like social applications, like if you've heard of the Lens protocol ecosystem, a lot of their leading apps, are use Livepeer to power the video. So if you're scrolling through your Lens feed on an app like Orb, and some of the tweets or what are they called in Lens? The posts.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the posts or the casts, right? If they have video in them, that video was processed by the Livepeer network, served through the Livepeer studio software. Right, so we power social applications that look like Twitter or TikTok. We power event streaming applications like StreamETH is the sort of event streaming platform that streams, DevCon and EthCC and like all the ETH conferences. We power traditional Web2 streaming apps. Like there's one cool one called God Behind Bars that does like church services streaming into prisons for the inmates to watch.
Oh, really?
And they're sort of choosing Livepeer because it's cost effective and high quality product.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I actually was at ETH Denver speaking about DePIN, ironically, and then when I got to see it on Twitter, I had no idea that it was powered by your service. So that's pretty amazing when it found itself back to the masses to see. You talked about one of the really interesting value props of DePIN, which is you're able to drive efficiencies into the product offering. You mentioned like 60% cheaper than the cloud. One of the things I was curious about is, do you also see a performance benefit that you get by having a distributed network that you don't maybe see with some of these other centralized providers, just given the fact that you're not running everything on a central server that is prone to problems and it's a shared cloud, so you're kind of competing for resources? Is that another quote unquote benefit that you're able to deliver for developers?
Yeah, definitely in some regards, right? Like you get the benefit of sort of like local ingest points and distribution points. So with video in particular, you don't want to be sending it all the way around the world before it can be ingested and coded. You want to be sending it a short network hop on a high connection speed. And so the fact that we have node operators all around the world can reduce latency and increase the likelihood of the sort of the raw video getting to where it needs to get very early on. So that can help with performance, right? I think, our open software stack has taken steps to introduce like low latency streaming and WebRTC based video streaming, pretty early on, whereas maybe a big centralized provider that's not on their roadmap, or they don't, move as quick to adapt that in some regards. In other, I think reliability is an area where we get a lot of benefit because you do reduce that single point of failure, and we do have this built-in redundancy where if any node is down or not performing, hey, it's really cost effective to be working with multiple, or to the gateway node will quickly find another. So that's a benefit. But of course, like doing all this in a decentralized global context also presents challenges that maybe a small, fast-moving, centralized platform, doesn't have as well. So, it's been a long build. It's taken a while to get to the levels of reliability that the enterprise-grade industry would expect. But it's exciting that we're there now.
Yeah. No, it definitely sounds like it. I'm curious, from the actual node side of the equation, you mentioned all of these different facets within the actual software stack itself. Are all nodes on the network doing the same function, or do nodes provide different types of function, whether, you mentioned encoding or, sharing to other peers? Like how, if I'm a person that wants to be able to contribute compute resources or GPU resources, is it one and the same? Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't mention this yet, but a really exciting sort of thing that's been a focus on our roadmap this year, and is going to be a big focus in the coming year as well, is expanding the network to additional job types beyond just sort of video transcoding was the first main job type. That was the heavy form of video compute initially. What's the catalyst for new job types? Unsurprisingly, it's how AI or artificial intelligence is affecting the future of video. There's a couple areas where that is exciting. One I would call is like the new creative areas using generative AI. So now for the first time, people can give prompts or text prompts to describe videos they want, and then GPUs can actually generate videos from prompts. And that's going to like change the game in terms of creativity. And you've maybe seen demos from like OpenAI when they drop their Sora demo and how cool and impressive it is that people will be able to create videos from prompts. So, hey, that takes a ton of compute to do it. It might take like, an hour of compute to generate a minute of video on high-end GPUs. And hey, lo and behold, it just so turns out Livepeer is a network of thousands of GPUs that do video compute. And so we're offering those job types on our network. There's also, I guess, more traditional video workflow improvements that benefit from AI. Like we're having this conversation, you can use AI to generate the closed caption subtitles and transcribe our conversation, right? Or you can use AI to upscale it so we can be sending like less data over the internet, but then you can use AI to turn it into an HD video, right? And a lot of video applications want to leverage those, and similarly, they require the compute. So you asked about different job types and capabilities on the network. That's really coming to fruition right now. We see different node operators offering different AI models and different capabilities because you need different hardware. You need high-end GPUs with enough VRAM in order to do these generative video jobs. Whereas on a sort of cheaper consumer-grade GPU with less memory, you can do a subtitle generation or a video transcode. Right. And so now the marketplace is really like becoming more competitive and dynamic, and different nodes are offering different services at different price points. It'll be really interesting to see over time as like demand picks up for all these different AI services, how that yields in terms of competition, cost reduction, et cetera.
Yeah, no, it's certainly changing the game in terms of how people are thinking about creating content and interfacing with content. I know a lot of these sort of generated style videos are taking over the web in a lot of respects. How does Livepeer anticipate sort of interfacing with these OpenAI models to leverage your GPU network to actually create the content? Is it that they'll be, you'll have a platform that can essentially like use an API to access these GPU networks with a fee that is incurred? Or are you guys looking at building sort of your own interface that would be able to interact with these GPUs? Can you just talk through how you're thinking of rolling this out and productizing it going forward?
Yeah, so at the rawest level, at the Livepeer network level, this network is open access. Anyone can run a Livepeer gateway node permissionlessly. They can fund it with ETH, and they can request these job types, through the network. Our node operators that are performing the compute, we call them orchestrators. What they're doing is they're registering on chain. They're putting down some stake to secure their work, and then they're advertising their capabilities, which in this AI world, that's essentially like, which models can I run inference on, right? And so, anyone that wants to use those capabilities can run their own gateway node and can discover them and find and negotiate nodes, send jobs to them, and get the responses, right? So that's cool. That's awesome. That's open access. That's a fundamental building block for everything. How do we see most users using these services? The AI effort's pretty early. On the video transcoding side, a vast majority of the usage would come through hosted services. People would, they'd run their own nodes, but then they'd put a nice sort of API interface on top. They'd use credit card billing instead of, crypto deposits. They'd hide the crypto from the users and just create like a smooth developer experience. I think on the AI side, you'll certainly see people use like hosted gateways or hosted nodes. I do think because the interface for some of these things is a little more straightforward and accessible. Like any developer can send a text prompt and then handle a video or an image that comes back, and they know how to like quickly integrate that and build that into their workflow. I think it's more likely you will see people building more direct on the network, maybe running their own nodes because that's the most cost effective and permissionless way to do it. Video transcoding, a little more heavy workflow. Like you're building this whole end-to-end streaming application. You're not really pulling things apart just to transcode it, put it back, store it, do whatever. So there, like a hosted end-to-end platform makes a lot of sense. But I'll be curious to see how that nets out in AI.
Yeah. Do you have any just sort of general timelines of when these types of interactions or interfaces with the AI on the generation side is going to be a part of the Livepeer network? Is that something you're able to talk about at all?
We're live right now. We've been live for a couple of months with some of the basic pipelines. So we have, text to image to image to video, video upscaling, and the subtitle closed captioning are live on the Livepeer network. We titled it a subnet right now, a little bit of a technical term about how people are running nodes, but yeah, that's accessible. There's 5 apps that are built on top in the showcase that are sort of demos, and then there's 8 startups that are building in a startup program as design partners at the moment. We look forward to really rolling this out with a more robust developer experience in the coming month or so. And then beyond that, there's a whole roadmap for sort of expanding this a little bit more inspirationally and flexibly. So instead of just saying, hey, here's a few open source models you can run, text to image on. Hey, what is the future of video as it relates to AI? How can people build their own models and workflows and bring them onto the network and really iterate on the future of live streaming AI and some of these more cutting edge areas. So I think you'll see a lot sort of before the end of the year in terms of opening this up more flexibly, and then looking out over the next year, really sort of accelerating into some of the experimental, live streaming areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, the future is definitely bright and very much open in terms of how these things will play out over time. And I think it's going to be a really, really big opportunity and sort of a big business. So I'm curious to see how that shapes out over time for you as, a function of your revenue, like how much it'll come from this generative AI live stream versus, your current business model. I think that'll be really interesting. So I don't have a Windows device that has a NVIDIA GPU on it. So I was actually trying to be a node on the network a few weeks back for Livepeer. But for those that want to become a node operator, can you just talk about like the basic requirements right now for folks who maybe have hardware that they could provide to the network and what that looks like for getting onboarded?
Yeah, so typically anyone with a GPU or multiple GPUs, there's jobs available for them on the Livepeer network, and we have software available for Windows or for Linux based deployments. I think those node operators would want to have a strong like bandwidth connection to the internet because video is pretty heavy and you have to be performant and receive it, encode video and send it out. So it's a little different than like just crypto mining where the bandwidth is maybe less critical. But our community is great. Our documentation resources are great. Even though these node operators are competing with one another, they're there to help people get started and onboard. So people would join the Discord. You can find the link on livepeer.org. One of the like bigger challenges is actually there's like 100 node operator slots on the network for these orchestrators. And you have to have enough minimum stake or LPT deposited to get into that top 100. And that does represent like it's a few $1,000s worth. It's sort of a significant financial hurdle for someone to just show up and get one of the slots. But a lot of times the path that they'll take is any of those node operators, those orchestrators can be connected to as many GPUs as they want behind their one Livepeer node. And so some of them are big mining operations and have tens, hundreds, or thousands of GPUs. Not that there's enough video demand to occupy thousands of GPUs, but they're using them for other things. Others are just have 1 or 2 GPUs, but a lot of them run pools. So there's a couple of pools where if you just have a GPU, you want to start earning ETH, you can just without worrying about LPT or Livepeer node, you can just download their pool software, double click it, and you'll be up and running on their pool. That's a great way to get started, to learn about it, to join the community. And then, over time, they often evolve into their own node operators.
No, that's super interesting. I know that your Mac is going to be available at some point. It's on the roadmap. Is that accurate?
I think for some of the AI jobs, it would be possible, right? I don't think anyone's like laptop on Wi-Fi has been like competitive in this network of video encoding to date necessarily. But I think as there's additional lighter weight job types or ones that depend less on latency, you'd have an opportunity just with your sort of personal computer to maybe compete on cost and monetize some of your idle time for sure, especially as these devices get more and more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you said that's a little bit unrelated to the Livepeer platform directly, but you mentioned Ethereum being the blockchain that you're on. I'm curious with how many transactions are going through the network, given the number of customers that you're supporting. Has that been a sort of a scaling challenge for you at all in terms of being able to support all these customers? Obviously, like back when you started, Ethereum was the game in town. That's the one that you built on. But I'm just curious today how if that has been a challenge or how you guys have sort of looked at that from the development side to mitigate some of these cost considerations with transaction fees, so on and so forth.
Yeah, good question. So we faced tremendous scaling challenges during peak Ethereum gas days. It became very expensive for node operators to do their daily transactions they needed to just to earn rewards and keep the protocol going. And we actually migrated to Arbitrum. We were one of the first, I think we were definitely the first DePIN protocol to migrate to Arbitrum right after their launch. And that has been super successful in terms of meeting the needs of the protocol and bringing the fees down. Yeah, what are the transactions? Like, first of all, no video ever touches the blockchain, right? People are always like, how do you put video on the
Yeah.
blockchain? It's like, no, 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 that's not what the blockchain is used for. It's used for this on-chain registry of service providers. It's used for securing the work through a stake-based protocol. It's used for settling payments. It's used for governance, right? So all that occurs. There's, a couple hundred transactions per day in the protocol just to do the accounting for the rounds and the protocol rewards and the LPT issuance. Anytime a node wins a payment, which is probabilistic, so it's like you might encode thousands of segments of video, and every one of those you have a chance of winning a payment, but most of them lose. But then eventually you like win one, and that covers the cost. It's like a high value, and it covers the cost of all the work you did probabilistically. So, our node operators might win payments every day in the form of a couple of dollars if they're doing a lot of work. Some of them win a payment, once a month for a couple $100, depending on, how they set their parameters. But so that's not, it's not that many transactions, maybe another couple hundred a day through that and through token actions like staking, bonding, unbonding. So all in all, if those transactions cost, a few cents each on a cost-effective network like Arbitrum, we're just talking about a couple $100 a day to run the whole protocol. During crazy Ethereum gas wars, it was like, man, nodes had to pay $100 in order to earn their rewards for the day, and unless they were earning more than $100, like that didn't make sense. And you saw,
Right.
that sort of the bottom 2/3 of nodes couldn't profitably, earn every day, and that was a problem. So the migration was really important.
Yeah, I'd imagine so because those costs can get very expensive very quickly, and Arbitrum scales quite well. So I think that makes a lot of sense for your guys' roadmap decisions. Speaking of roadmap, you talked about AI, generative AI. Are there other things that the Livepeer team is currently working on or sort of thinking about for what's ahead that maybe are unrelated to just the AI side of things that you're able to talk about a little bit?
Yeah, there's a couple of exciting areas sort of on the decentralization roadmap. So one that's been great is last year, end of last year, the community voted to introduce an on-chain treasury that is funded via the day-to-day inflation of the protocol. And so Livepeer already has inflation. Our node operators, our token holders who stake towards them are earning some Livepeer token every day. The community voted to sort of, take a 10% cut of what people's rewards would be, route them into an on-chain treasury, and then that anyone could use a permissionless governance mechanism to make proposals, receive funding to build public goods. And that's been really, really successful. And in a very like Livepeer way, not high in volume, but high in quality. So I think it's funded 7 or 8 different, not just apps or initiatives, but we call them special purpose entities that are mission oriented. It's like, my mission is to bring AI video compute onto the Livepeer network, and here's our plan and our roadmap for doing that. And we're asking for this much funding now. We're going to come back later and ask for more, right? And there's a demand generation focused one, and there's a low latency streaming focused one, and there's one that's focused on liquidity that's going to be an upcoming proposal. And this has been really exciting. We're funding more and more efforts. We're seeing more core development teams emerge where sort of the initial company that built a lot of this is not the main contributor. And really excited about like furthering the decentralization, especially as we push into the the new AI capabilities, because that'll require new companies to be built on top that have different products and go to market in different ways. And now we have the public goods funding mechanisms in place to do that. So, a lot of opportunity. I think our big challenge is that Treasury's been growing quickly, far quicker than we get approval for proposals and spend out of the Treasury. So there's not a shortage of capital. There's not a shortage of work and ideas. There's just opportunity for teams that want to learn about Livepeer and dive in and understand the stuff to access the funding to build and make contributions and build up stake in the network.
Yeah, that's amazing, and you get to see sort of all the benefits of decentralization coming together in real time, and it's obviously creating a better version of what was already out there today, and all the different ways that you're outcompeting the traditional sort of centralized platforms, but you're creating equity for those in the network, which is amazing. How else are people able to get involved outside of obviously becoming a node operator, sort of participating is really the main mechanism, sort of getting involved with governance, and if you're someone that wants to build these public goods or special purpose entities for the network, is that really the primary way other folks can get involved outside of, again, being a node operator?
Well, I alluded to this concept of staking and delegating. So maybe you're not a node operator, right? Maybe you don't have the hardware, and it's not your interest. But if you just hold the token, you can actually stake it towards one of these node operators, adding more stake on their behalf. It'll route more work to them. As long as they're doing work honestly and earning, they'll share back some of their rewards to you. They'll share back some of the fees that they earn to you. And your role as a delegator is basically quality assuring the network, routing work towards the nodes that are going to perform well, that are helping the network, because they'll earn more fees that they'll share back with you if they're performing well. And the network should be more useful and valuable if you have high performing node operators instead of just people doing nothing and leeching right on the network. So that's a good accessible way to get started. The last thing I would say on opportunities is our community is very strong. Our community is very welcoming and supportive and innovative, and they want to think about the future of AI-enabled media. They want to think about what on-chain media looks like and how that's different than traditional media. And so even people that are users or creators of video streaming applications have an opportunity to join the community and probably engage with the app builders that are building and maybe be the early users or experimenters on these platforms. And so I think anyone who has an interest in the future of creative media and video on the internet has a place in our developer and creator community in the Discord.
Yeah, that's amazing. I as someone who actually creates content, I can very much empathize with wanting to be involved in how that future gets shaped, especially with a project that's doing it in a way that's ethos aligned to what a lot of us believe in. So that's incredible. Gosh, we've talked about so many things. I think what you guys are doing is really incredible because it checks all the boxes from how this new approach or sort of novel approach, if you will, with decentralized physical infrastructure can just be better than what exists today, and it makes it equitable and it makes it it's just a better mousetrap, as I said. Are there anything else that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to bring up or share with the audience that it might be relevant or pertinent for them to know about Livepeer?
Yeah, I think we talked about all the exciting stuff on our roadmap, the future of what sort of, generative AI and everything can enable. I think that's definitely the aligning thing in the ecosystem. But I would just mention, if you are building a video application, if you're thinking about adding video to your existing application, there's a really easy way to get started, which is Livepeer Studio product. It's just, you point, click, you get free credits, you sign up for an API key, and you're off and building integrating the APIs into your video app in 5 minutes. And so I would just mention Livepeer Studio and point anyone there that considers themselves a potential user of the application.
That's fantastic. And we'll be sure to link all of that down below for people that want to get involved, whether that's the Discord, whether that's, the Livepeer Studio for folks to be able to go and find. Well, gosh, Doug, I'm really glad that you got to come on. I've been super interested in what you're doing just because, like I said, I've got somewhat of a vested interest in seeing kind of the future of media be successful. And then also, of course, this is what we know and love, which is decentralized infrastructure at its best. And so I think you guys really embody that in a well-proven model. So I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. We're going to definitely link all of that all that down below so folks can go find and get involved. And so if you are interested in seeing kind of the future of video in a decentralized way, which is going to be the way that people communicate and they get access to everything in the future, you should be checking this project out for sure. So with that, Doug, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we will wrap it up here, but we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks for having me.